So you're making decent money, way more than you were a year ago, maybe even just a few months back. But it feels like you're working all day but not actually moving forward, like you're stuck in a glorified 9 to 5, but instead of working 9 to 5, you're working 10, 12 hours a day, stuck trading your time for money. Well, I've been there, and it took me 4 key steps to actually break past that mark and scale all the way to 180k a month. But let's worry about getting you past your first 10 to 20k a month like I did just over 3 years ago now. And by the end of this video, you know exactly how to break past that 5k a month mark and build for something that actually works for you and not the other way around. And I also wanted to make this video because it's very top of mind for me at the moment. I mean, just yesterday I had a call with one of my students, Jessica, where it was kind of like an update call where she was talking to me about what she's currently doing, what's working, what's not. And she's kind of stuck at that 5 to 7k a month mark, stuck in this 5k per month trap where she's struggling to break free of it and kind of feels like she's on a hamster wheel every single month starting from scratch. And it actually brought me back to a period of my life where I remember where I was stuck at the 5k a month mark. In fact, this is exactly what I looked like when I was stuck at the 5k a month mark about 3.5 years ago, I want to say, with social media management at 17 years old. And I remember the pain of being stuck at this 5k a month mark. I mean, I was doing it with social media management. I remember that I had 3 or 4 social media management clients. I was making about 4 to 5k a month, but I could not break past that number no matter what I felt like I did. And I ended up literally burning this business into the ground because I could not break past this mark. And so now I've got quite good context on what you actually need in order to break past that 5k a month mark. And so that's what I'm going to share in this video as a direct pull as well from the call that I had with Jessica, and sharing the lessons that I gave to her and the tips that I gave to her that I can almost guarantee the next time we have this call in a month or so, she's going to be at 15, 20k per month, no stress whatsoever. And I think it's also important to understand that the 5k per month bottlenecks are not unique to you. They are the same with everyone. Every single person that I've spoken to at this rough mark goes through these bottlenecks or has these problems that they need to actually alleviate in order to break through. And it falls into these 4 different categories. And when you can actually solve all of these 4 categories, you can quite easily break past that 10k a month mark as your next milestone, I suppose. Now, don't look too deeply into these photos. They are AI generated and not too relevant, but it makes sense as I go through the video. Now, the first thing that we're going to talk about is actually increasing your price. Now, most people charge based on how comfortable they are, not on the actual value they provide. And I had a chat with Jessica about her situation and kind of what price she's charging, because that's initially the question I always ask. You know, when someone says they're stuck at a certain amount of money per month, I go, right, are you struggling to get clients? Are you struggling to charge enough for clients? Because if you want to make more money, you get more clients, you charge more per client, right? That's typically kind of what it all falls down to. And she was just not charging anywhere near the amount of money that she should be charging, especially for the results that she was able to deliver. In fact, she was absolutely insane at acquiring clients and signing clients, but she was not very good at not only retaining them, but actually charging enough money to the point of where she was able to make a substantial dent in her bank account. And she didn't charge more because of this problem here. She was not comfortable enough with charging more money, not because she hadn't produced results, but because some limiting belief in the back of her head told her that she shouldn't actually increase the amount of money that she's charging. But the thing you need to understand is that as long as you are providing value within your service that well surpasses the amount of money that you're charging, then you are well within your rights to just add an extra 0 onto your price tag. And that's the first way to actually increase your pricing. Add an extra 0, or maybe even a few extra zeros to your pricing until you get to the point of where you start getting a lot of no's. For example, with Jessica, she had an incredibly high close rate. Her close rate was about 60% on the calls that she had. For me, that's a massive red flag. For her, that was amazing. She's a great closer. For me, it was a bad thing because it means that her pricing was too low to the point of where she was getting too many yeses. Typically within business, within a service-based business, you should have a close rate of around 30%. That tells you that enough people are saying no to the point of where, you know, your pricing isn't available to everybody, which makes sense. But there's also 3 out of those 10 people that say yes to your pricing, which is what you want because that actually allows you to sign clients. Second way to actually charge more money is just charge more lucratively, which basically means instead of just charging like a flat fee or a monthly retainer, try and charge based on the result that you can produce. So Jessica also charges based on revenue share. So she has a setup fee, she has a revenue share proposition where she says, for however much money I'll make you, I'll take this amount of money as a percentage. Now, her problem was that with her revenue share, she had self-capped it at the amount of money that she could make. So she took a 10% revenue share of her marketing service that she actually provided, but up to a certain point, I believe it was like $10,000 or $20,000, she wouldn't charge anything else on top of that, which to me made no sense whatsoever. But again, it came back down to this comfortable problem. She was comfortable within that kind of like 10 to 20k, 10% revenue share mark, and therefore she wouldn't actually break past it. So charging more lucratively, adding like a revenue share basis to your model also allows you to just make more money. And finally, the final thing you can do is actually work with a better market. And there are so many benefits that come with working with a better market. Firstly, they are less of a pain in the ass because people that are spending more money on something are always much better to do business with. They're also much easier to sell to. I mean, if you've been in business for a while, you run a service, you will understand the difference between selling to, I suppose, poor people or people that have as much money and people who have money to spend. It is so much easier to sell a higher price point to people who have the money to spend on that price point than it is to try and sell a low ticket product to people who don't have much money. And finally, of course, it's much easier to retain because they're not so worried about like the individual results that they get. They just want to see a really good overall picture, which as long as you can provide, you're absolutely fine. So that's the third thing, work with a better market. And again, Jessica kind of fell into this trap trap where she had a 60% close rate because she was charging so low, but she didn't feel like she could charge high. Number one, due to her confidence, and number two, due to the fact that she didn't feel like the people she was working with and having sales calls with didn't have a big enough budget. So it wasn't actually a problem of her service was too expensive, is that her service wasn't suited to them because her service was suited to a higher ticket market. So actually just working with a better market, more higher ticket market, is also a massive win, and a very, very easy win at that. And honestly, I can't stress this enough that every single person I talk to has the opportunity to increase their pricing, and every single time I tell them to increase their pricing and they do, they're always just frustrated they didn't do it sooner. So that is the first step to actually breaking past that 5K a month mark. Increase your pricing. You know, you can go from signing clients at 1K a pop or 2K a pop to 5K a pop quite easily, and instead of having to sign 5 clients in order to get to that 5K a month mark, you sign 1 or 2 and you well surpassed it. Now, the second thing that we're going to talk about is actually increasing your lifetime value, because it is far easier to retain a client than it is to actually get a new one. Because when it comes to retaining a client, you already have these things ticked off. You already have trust, you already have rapport built up, you already have authority built up because you've delivered a result for them, and you already have a good understanding of their problems, their industry, and where they want to get to. Now, a lot of people with a service-based business, especially that 5K a month mark, are so focused on acquiring clients, they're not very focused on retaining clients. And I fell into this trap as well. But the problem is, when you're not focused on retaining clients, it means that you have to constantly play the game of acquiring new clients every single month in order to just pay the bills. And again, Jessica fell directly into this trap, which is why I bring it up, because she has a influencer marketing service where she sells influencer marketing for 6-week to 3-month long campaigns a piece. So you do a campaign and it kind of ends there. And I asked Jessica, I said, awesome, what's the next step after the 3-month campaign? Like, what do you do? Do you go to a monthly campaign? Do you renew the campaign? She's like, nothing really. We kind of just like call it that. And if they want to work for longer, they can work for longer, but there's like no pressure. She was basically letting clients leave without a natural progression or next step to actually retain them and sign them on for either a higher ticket deal or just for a longer period of time. And that was massively biting her in the ass, because like I said, she was very good at signing clients. I think in the past like 6 months, she had obtained something like, I think it's like roughly 16 clients. And bearing in mind with a marketing agency, it's not impossible to do, but it's not that easy to do. Like typically you're signing reasonably high ticket clients. So to be able to sign 16 high ticket clients in a 6-month period is pretty impressive. But what if she was able to retain those clients that she had instead of churning them every single month? And it wasn't because she couldn't deliver a result. She was actually quite good at the service. I mean, she is good at the service, but she just didn't have a natural progression or a natural next step to actually keep the client on for a longer period of time. So the change in the difference that we made with Jessica was actually just by creating a very natural next step and progression to actually keep the client on and to kind of like upsell them almost on a different service. So for her, it was renewing the campaign and it was adjusting the campaign and getting the client to spend a bigger budget on the campaign. Now they had proven results, and you could do a very similar thing depending on what your service is. So to increase your lifetime value, there are 2 things you can actually do, right? You can either retain or you can upsell, or in fact, you can do both. Retaining, this one down here, is just keeping them on for a longer period of time. It's not having like a 3-month campaign and calling it quits there. It's every single month going forward, or 3-month campaigns recurring. Upsell is basically trying to sell your client on an additional service that you've identified they can actually do with as a result of delivering your first service to them, right? Now, retaining them is about finding a way to naturally keep them on for longer. Upselling is about finding a way to increase how much they pay you. Upselling is also very easy. You are just trying to identify another spot in which potentially they have a problem in their service and trying to fill that gap with a solution that you can provide. And if you can do both of those things, it's absolutely golden, because you can retain a client for longer, make more money, but you can upsell them, meaning that instead of, making $1,000 a month for them or whatever it may be, you can potentially make $2,000 every single month from them by creating an additional service that actually is relevant to them. Now, the third thing you can do to break past that 5K a month mark is actually start to outsource low leverage tasks. And this is something that many people kind of ignore because they think, oh, I'm only at 5K a month, so I shouldn't really be outsourcing yet because I'm not at that like spot yet where I think I should be. And as a business owner, you have 2 assets, okay? You have time, you have energy. Those are the only 2 things that you can spend every single day. Now, when you're at that 5K a month mark, like I said, you're at this weird stage where you don't feel like you're big enough yet to where you should outsource, but you're taking on enough tasks to the point of where actually you need to do something with your time effectively, because you are juggling so many different balls, you're spinning so many different plates at once, which means that your focus is nowhere, it's in everything. But I would argue at the 5K a month mark, you're at a perfect stage to outsource. You have enough cash coming in, the point where you're able to sustain yourself, but you also have enough cash to where you can hire a VA for like $500 a month to do the tedious tasks that you don't want to do, the incredibly low leverage tasks that don't produce much of a result. Now, what that's going to do for you is it's going to allow you to free up your time and kind of buy your time back a little bit and spend it on the high leverage tasks that actually push the needle forward and actually produce a result. Now, high leverage task should be you. That should be what you're spending your time doing. And low leverage task should be anyone else. Anyone who you can find that can actually achieve the thing that you want them to achieve or take care of the thing you want them to take care of is what they should be focusing on. Now, Jessica, to be honest, didn't have too much of a problem with this, that like her tasks weren't the biggest issue, but I could identify and I could tell that she was spread so incredibly thin within her business that she didn't actually know what to focus on in order to push the needle forward. It was kind of like she was doing everything and anything because what else was she meant to do? You know, she was the only person in the business. But like I said, if she could hire a VA to take care of the tedious stuff that she thought, you know, maybe didn't create that much of a difference, that would have changed her business tenfold. And that's also some advice that I gave her going forward. So even though you're at that weird stage, it's worth hiring someone that you believe can buy you back some of your time. So please do learn to outsource, and it will help you break past that 5K month mark. Even if you dip below it slightly whilst you hired someone, you know, you dip below to 4, maybe even 3.5, depending on how much you pay people, it will still give you the boost that you need in order to, again, buy back your time, double down where you're spending your energy and your focus onto something that's actually important and get a better result. But of course, it's not just time, it's energy and focus. You know, when you're running the entire business, it's not just about, oh, I have to put 4 hours towards that, but you're focused on so many different aspects of the business that nothing is getting your individual attention. And when nothing is getting your individual attention, there's no focal point. There's no focal point of growth in which you can put all of your energy towards. But when, let's say that you've outsourced 60% of the tedious stuff and you can just focus on client acquisition and fulfillment, you're going to have a much better experience, or you're going to produce a much better result with acquiring clients and with fulfilling for those clients, and therefore you'll grow your business. Hope you kind of get you're picking up what I'm picked out. And the final thing to mention to actually break past that 5K month mark is client acquisition. Now, this is obvious. Obviously, if you want to break past 5K month, you need to make sure you're acquiring more clients. But what I want to focus on in this point that I'm making here is that your goal is to make the client acquisition repeatable and predictable. That is your entire focus, right? Now, with a lot of people that I speak to, and as well with Jessica, when I spoke to her about, you know, how she's actually acquiring clients currently, it is all very hit and miss. Like, you probably understand it as well if you're at this stage where acquiring a client for you is kind of like by chance. It's like, I don't know, there's like a 20% chance that I'll close one this month. The rest, I have no idea. It's not really up to me, right? You just kind of hope, keep your fingers crossed, pay for the best. Now, you may still be doing these individual acquisition methods where you're doing some outreach. Maybe you're running ads. Maybe you're, you know, focusing on referrals. Maybe you're making content as well. And individually, these are outreach methods. Don't get me wrong. These are methods of acquiring clients. But separately, they're not systemized. They're very, very chancy. They're very sporadic, volatile, inconsistent, right? In order to actually make sure that it is repeatable and predictable, as I mentioned here, you need to build a system around these things, a system where they can benefit each other and bounce off each other to produce the result that you're looking for. Now, the truth is that you don't rise to the level of your ambition, you fall back to the level of your systems. And that's why we need to make sure that when it comes to acquiring clients, you're not doing it by chance. It is a consistent, repeatable process that is happening in the background, whether you're there or not. It is always giving you a full pipeline of people that you can talk to, conversate with, and close. Now, when I talk to people about acquiring clients and they say, you know, what's the best method to actually acquire clients? There are loads, like I said. In order to build a system, that's where the real money is made. And I always focus on organic client acquisition, where you are basically mixing inbound with outbound in order to acquire clients for free, incredibly efficiently, incredibly effectively, kind of on demand almost. Now, the way this works is quite effective. So with organic client acquisition, you've got inbound and you've got outbound. Inbound means people are coming to you. This is typically done through creating content. Outbound means that you are reaching out to people in a permission-based message. Now, I'll talk about permission-based messages in a minute, but it's basically you are reaching out to people. Now, on their own, they work, don't get me wrong, but together they are a powerhouse, because actually when you are outreaching to people with a permission-based message, your message is then reinforced by the content that you're posting. And not only that, but your content. But when you're outreaching someone with an outbound message, whether it's an email, whether it's a DM, ideally a DM in this case, you can use a permission-based message, which basically breaks the ice really well. But actually your message is reinforced really well by your content, because you don't just outreach to anyone, but you outreach to people who you've identified have actually engaged with your content in the first place. So when you're posting content out there, talking about your craft, what you're good at, what you can do, showcasing some results, and obviously showing some personality, people will start to tag onto you. They'll start to identify with you. They'll start to kind of resonate with you as a person. With that, you then become an authority figure with your permission-based message, which basically just makes them see you as the expert, the person who can actually help them achieve the thing that they want to achieve. And it all works in a kind of like an ecosystem, because again, with outbound, if you're reaching out to people who is completely cold, you're reaching out to someone who's never spoke to you before, they will see your content, see you're an authority figure, your chances of getting a response are 10 times higher. If you're just making content, when it comes to seeing people who engage, and you can do this through lead magnets, you can do it through just general engagement, you'll see people who engage, you will tag them, and then you will outreach them after they've engaged, because again, they already know who you are, so you've already got that stack of credibility there, which works wonderfully. Anyway, I won't go into too much detail here. If you want a separate video on this, let me know. I can talk on this for days, and I also help people with this directly with the organic client acquisition. This is kind of my bread and butter. I've got systems around this, and I've been doing it for years. But that is what I would always recommend when it comes to acquiring clients, and especially building a system around it. It's free, it's incredibly effective. You can outsource about 90% of this as well with setters, ideators, scripters, and you just sit there and record the content or make the post, and it just puts money in your pocket, which is obviously incredibly effective. Because that's how it works, right? Your goal is to have a roaring fire, and the wood of that fire is client acquisition, which means that if you're not having that wood almost delivered and put on your fire automatically, your fire will not continue to roar, and it will slowly fizzle out as you start to churn clients, and by the end of it, you just have a kind of pool of ash, which you don't want. But anyway, those are the 4 methods that you can use to actually break past that 5K month mark, and not only that, but break past that 10K month mark. Obviously, I've gone through it in incredibly shallow detail here. Otherwise, you would be here watching this video for about 4 hours. But just to kind of recap, increase your prices, focus on increasing and improving the lifetime value of your clients, hire and outsource, delegate, spend your time more effectively and wisely, and pass off the low leverage tasks to people who can take care of it probably more efficiently than you. And fourthly, use client acquisition systems, not by chance, not through word of mouth, not by a lucky referral. Have systems that are repeatable and predictable. And I promise you, breaking past that 10K a month mark will kind of become silly, and you'll be like, oh, how do I break past 20K per month? How do I break past 30K per month? And that's what it looks like. But if you want to learn directly from me as well, I'm going to leave a link at the top of the description that you can go and check out. That's basically going to kind of give you an outline of how I can help you. But I do this for a living. I help people with service-based businesses, freelancers, small agency owners, B2B service providers make a lot of money. And these are just like a really small snapshot of some of the systems that I use, what we talk about here. But if you want to learn how you can do it directly with me, check the link out in the description below. Watch the video on the next page. It will give you all the information that you need. And then, yeah, I'm sure we will meet each other soon. See you there.